You know, in the real world, the nitty-gritty of the real world, when you fail, you get fired. In government, when you fail, you get more money because obviously you need it. Now, let me ask you a fourth time. If President Lopez Obrador, and I'd appreciate an answer, if President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with his, we could stop the cartels, couldn't we?
What you just watched is one of those moments in Congress that makes you sit up straight. This exchange between Senator John Kennedy and DEA Administrator Anne Milgram isn't about theatrics. It's about urgency, accountability, and the brutal reality of the fentanyl crisis killing Americans every single day. I'll be honest, Senator John Kennedy asked a very simple question, and what we got back was everything except a straight answer. And that's exactly why moments like this matter. Welcome back to Congress Lens. I'm Audrey, and on this channel we break down congressional moments without the fluff, without the spin, and with context that actually makes sense. If you care about government accountability, border security, and leaders actually doing what they say, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's really happening inside these hearings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Administrator, the two cartels that are sending fentanyl into the United States are located in Mexico, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
And isn't it a fact that we could stop those cartels in their tracks if President Lopez Obrador would invite American military and or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with his military and law enforcement personnel?
Senator, what I would say from my purview as the head of the DEA...
But is my statement true or not?
What I would say is that we're focused on the two cartels, who we believe are doing exactly what you say. They are responsible for the fentanyl coming
Let me
to
ask
the
you
United
again.
States.
If President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and or American law enforcement officials to come into Mexico to work with the same in Mexico, we could stop the cartels, could we not?
Senator, I believe this is a whole of government effort and has to be, including whether it's the military, us, FBI,
now,
and others.
Madam Administrator, I've listened to you here for almost an hour telling us how bad fentanyl is. Thank you for that, but we know.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you a third time. If President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with the same in Mexico, we could stop the cartels. Isn't that a fact?
So, Senator, I can speak to the law enforcement side of this, and you just mentioned law enforcement. I believe that this is vital for both Mexico and the United States. Mexicans are dying as well, as we showed in the Chapitos.
Well, then why don't we stop them?
So
would it help? Let me ask you a fourth time. Would it help if President Lopez Obrador, I don't think it's a complicated question, Madam Administrator. You're asking us for more money every year, more money, and it gets worse, worse, and worse. You know, in the real world, the nitty-gritty of the real world, when you fail, you get fired. In government, when you fail, you get more money because obviously you need it. Now, let me ask you a fourth time. If President Lopez Obrador, and I'd appreciate an answer, if President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with his, we could stop the cartels, couldn't we?
I believe, Senator, that we can stop the cartels.
Okay, have you made that suggestion to President Biden?
If I could, I believe that we can stop the cartels by...
Have you made that suggestion to President Biden?
Senator, I have been very vocal in the whole of government setting on the importance of fentanyl and all of us using every single effort and authority that we have.
Why hasn't President Biden done it? I mean, this is the way the American people, whose sons and daughters are dying, look at it. Our economy is $23 trillion. Mexico's economy is $1.3 trillion. Ours is 18 times bigger. We buy $400 billion every year from Mexico. Without the people of America, Mexico, figuratively speaking, would be eating cat food out of a can and living in a tent behind an outback. So why don't you and the president, embarrassing no one, get on the phone and call President Lopez Obrador and make him a deal he can't refuse to allow our military and our law enforcement officials to go into Mexico and work with his to stop the cartels? Why don't you do that?
Senator, what I am doing every single day is working with the incredible men and women of DEA who are risking their lives across 334 offices worldwide.
And I appreciate that, but you're not doing what would work. Why won't you do what will work?
Senator,
why don't you call the president this afternoon and say, Mr. President, let's call President Lopez Obrador privately and make him a deal he can't refuse. Because we both know that President Lopez Obrador has neither the ability nor the will to stop the cartels. But yet we go along and pretend that they're our friends, and Mexico is our friend. But he has criminal organizations that are killing our people, and you know how to stop it, and the president does, and you're not doing it.
Senator, we are working every day to stop it.
But you're not doing what would stop it.
We are transforming, and we are working in countless ways across the globe to do what needs to be done for the American people. And there is nothing that the men and women...
when it's important to you, you make it happen. When it's not important to you, you make an excuse.
Now let's talk about what Senator John Kennedy actually exposed here. Senator John Kennedy did something very few people in Washington are willing to do. He refused to let the conversation drift into bureaucratic fog. From the very beginning, Senator John Kennedy laid out a fact that no one seriously disputes. The two major cartels flooding the United States with fentanyl are based in Mexico. That's not controversial. That's documented. So Senator John Kennedy asked a direct, practical question. If President Andrés Manuel López Obrador allowed U.S. military and law enforcement to work alongside Mexican forces, could the cartels be stopped? Notice what happened next. DEA Administrator Anne Milgram talked about whole-of-government approaches, interagency cooperation, and ongoing efforts. All familiar phrases, all very polished, and all carefully designed to avoid answering the core question. Senator John Kennedy didn't let that slide. He asked again, and again, and again. That persistence matters because this isn't a policy seminar. This is about American lives. When Senator John Kennedy pointed out that the government asks for more money every year while the problem gets worse, he wasn't being dramatic. He was being accurate. In the real world, failure doesn't earn bonuses. In Washington, it earns bigger budgets. And then came the moment that really cut through the noise. Senator John Kennedy laid out the power imbalance clearly. The U.S. economy is over $23 trillion. Mexico's is roughly $1.3 trillion. The United States buys hundreds of billions of dollars in Mexican goods every year. In other words, leverage exists. Senator John Kennedy wasn't calling for recklessness. He was calling for serious diplomacy backed by serious consequences. A phone call, a firm stance, a deal that protects American families instead of protecting political comfort. When Anne Milgram said, "I believe we can stop the cartels," Senator John Kennedy immediately followed up with the most important question of all. Then why hasn't the president done it? That question hung in the air unanswered. What Senator John Kennedy exposed here is the gap between knowing what works and doing what works. The administration understands the threat. They understand the source. They understand the stakes. But understanding without action is meaningless to families burying their children. The most powerful line in this exchange came at the very end. When it's important to you, you make it happen. When it's not, you make an excuse. That wasn't rhetoric. That was a verdict. Whether you agree with Senator John Kennedy's exact solution or not, one thing is undeniable. He demanded accountability in a room full of excuses. And in today's Washington, that alone makes this moment worth watching. This is why hearings like this matter. This is why persistence matters. And this is why Congress Lens exists. If you want more breakdowns like this, clear, direct, and unfiltered, subscribe, like, and share. I'm Audrey, and I'll see you in the next one.